Hi, my name is Zach Bradford, and this is my Project 2, a PowerPoint over a behavioral learning theory, and I'll be doing my PowerPoint over classical conditioning. This is for Psychological Foundations, EDF 5063. So classical conditioning is, a learning theory that, says that when you pair, it's a learning process that occurs when you pair two stimuli repeatedly, and that eventually the second stimulus will alone produce the behavior that the first stimulus elicited by itself. There are 5 components. They are the unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, neutral stimulus, conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response. First, the unconditioned stimulus, which is the first stimulus, initiates behavior with no prior conditioning. And so, like in the famous Pavlov's dog example, the unconditioned stimulus would be the meat. The meat already automatically causes the dog to salivate. You don't need to teach the dog to salivate with the introduction of meat. Second is the unconditioned response, which is the behavior that requires no teaching or conditioning. So this would be the salivation. No one needs to teach a dog to salivate when there's food nearby. Neutral stimulus. And so a neutral stimulus would be anything. Anything that at that time, the time of the conditioning, before you start the conditioning, I should say, this stimulus has no effect on the behavior in question, like the salivating. That's the behavior in question, and before conditioning, prior to conditioning, the bell in Pavlov's experiment doesn't have any effect on salivation whatsoever. But it does when you pair the neutral stimulus with the unconditioned stimulus. So when you pair the bell with the meat, you create the conditioned stimulus that after the conditioning, after the whole process, it elicits the desired behavior. So when it's all said and done, the bell now starts the dog to salivate, which makes it the conditioned stimulus. Conditioned response is the same response, the salivation, only that now it's the result of the newly conditioned stimulus, which would be salivation due to a bell ringing. And here is that example. Before conditioning, you have the food, which is the unconditioned, causes salivation, the unconditioned. Also, before conditioning, the bell does nothing. It doesn't cause the dog to do anything. During conditioning, little box 3, it shows them pairing the bell with the food, which elicits the unconditioned response. And if you do that enough times, the bell alone will start to cut off a little bit there, start to cause the dog to salivate all on its own. As far as application to a real-world classroom scenario, I came up with a little something. If you want to go about making a procedure where flickering lights let the students know that they're too loud, it would go like this. You have the unconditioned stimulus, which is letting students know verbally that they're too loud and you want them to be quiet. The students don't need any conditioning to understand that you want them to be quiet. So hopefully the unconditioned response would that they quiet down. A neutral stimulus probably, maybe technically, would be flickering the classroom lights on and off. They may stop to look, but they wouldn't know that's what you meant, what you wanted them to do. So prior to conditioning, it would be considered a neutral stimulus. Now, if you pair the flickering of lights with letting them know, hey, all you guys are way too loud, they will start to associate flickering lights with you telling them they're too loud or that they're being too loud. And this would make the flickering lights a conditioned stimulus, pairing it with the pairing the conditioned stimulus with the neutral, or the unconditioned stimulus with the neutral stimulus creates the conditioned stimulus. Then the conditioned response would be that the students quiet down after the lights have been flickered. Thank you very much. This was my project 2 over Pavlov's classical conditioning.